I spent 3 years running my childhood friend's orchard, making him over $1 million.
But at the end of the year, he just tossed me $2,500. He pointed right at my nose and sneered, saying I'm just a tree planter, and that even a dog on a leash could do my job. I calmly took the money. I turned around and leased the barren, salty wasteland at the west end of the village. A year later, my land became a model orchard.
Well, he ran his own orchard straight into bankruptcy
And ended up begging on his knees outside my door.
Lin Yuan.
Here's $50,000 for 3 years of work. Take it and get lost. Brother Chang. We agreed on $50,000 a year. For the past 3 years, I worked myself to the bone day and night.
I turned 300 acres of diseased trees into a thriving 300-acre orchard.
This year's apple crop is worth over $1 million.
You begged me to quit my job and come back to the village and promised me a 30% share. Does that million have a damn thing to do with you?
The land is mine. The trees are mine. Dunny, Durley.
And you're just a nobody who plants them. Giving you $50,000 is already charity because we're from the same village.
If I hired some outsider to watch the orchard for 3 years, it would have only cost me $30,000 or $40,000.
Plus, you got over 1,000 days of free housing out of it.
I slept in a freezing, drafty shack and stayed up all night burning smoke to protect the trees from frost. I ruined my health for this, and all it's worth to you is $50,000?
Sun Q sneered. I was just dangling a carrot.
And you, a college graduate, actually believed me?
I control the entire fruit market in Lishu village.
Cross me, and you won't survive a single day here.
Outside the door, the workers whispered, Brother Chang is being way too greedy.
Lin Yuan really worked his butt off for the past 3 years.
Brother Kyung rules this village with an iron fist.
Don't cross him!
Hearing their whispers, I took a deep breath, snatched the money, and said, fine.
50,000 it is. Slowly and deliberately, I said. Sun Chong, mark my words. I will make you regret this $50,000 for the rest of your life.
Are you threatening me? Once a loser like you actually makes it, don't you dare come begging to partner with me.
Now get lost.
I stormed out of the orchard. 3 years of my youth completely wasted on a dog. But sooner or later, I will settle this debt. With interest. Clutching the only $50,000 I had, I pushed open the doors of the village committee office. I was about to do something that would make the entire village think I had lost my mind. Chief Wang, I want to lease that barren wasteland at the west end of the village. The old village chief, Wang Bo, almost spat out his tea. But that place is nothing but salty soil and rocks. What on earth you want to lease that for?
To plant fruit trees. I, Lin Yuan, replied firmly.
Are you out of your mind? Sun Chung really drove you crazy. That land is so dead, not even weeds will grow there.
And you're throwing all your hard-earned savings from the past few years right into that bottomless pit?
$50,000 for a 5-year lease. Mr. Wang, do you think we can sign the contract today? If you spend every penny on the lease.
How are you going to afford to restore the soil? How are you going to buy the saplings?
Mr. Wen, I'll pay $20,000 first for the deposit and the first year's rent. I'll pay the rest in installments. As for the land, I'll shovel it scoop by scoop and haul in fresh soil. I refuse to swallow this humiliation. I have to prove them wrong. You really are a stubborn kid. Fine, I'll have someone draw up the contract. But if you lose everything, don't come crying to me. The news spread like wildfire throughout Lishu village.
Lin Yuan actually spent $50,000 to lease that barren wasteland at the west end.
Anything you plant there is bound to die. He's basically throwing his money down the drain.
That very afternoon,
I grabbed my shovel and headed out to the field. The sun was beating down mercilessly.
the rocky, barren ground was as hard as iron.
Every strike of my shovel sent a bone-jarring shock straight up my arms, leaving my hands, but I didn't stop. Not even for a second.
My mind was consumed by the sheer humiliation of being kicked out like a dog.
Oh, look who it is. Have you completely lost your mind? You actually leased this worthless piece of dirt? Sang Kyun strolled over with his lackeys, his face dripping with smug satisfaction. He kicked a stone aside, sneering, nobody wants this garbage land anyway.
You think $50,000 is enough to make a comeback by planting fruit trees? Don't make me laugh. It's not that simple.
You won't even be able to afford a single decent sapling.
Just wait until you're crying your eyes out.
This is my property now. Get the hell out! I glared at him coldly. Sumchung chuckled. Ooh, quite a temper. Too bad I'm only here to watch the show. Once you actually grow some fruit.
Don't forget to send a couple of pounds my way. I just hope they don't turn out so sour they'll rot your teeth.
Let's go. As I watched his arrogant figure walk away, I gripped the shovel handle tighter. Just then, a clear, crisp female voice rang out from the edge of the barren field. So, you're Lin Yuan. Nice eye. This land looks like a total waste, but it's actually a rare hidden treasure. Startled, I turned around. Standing on the pile of gravel was a young woman with a high ponytail. A treasure? I asked, wiping the sweat from my brow. The entire village said this land was dead. I'm Yeshan, a researcher stationed at the County Bureau of Agriculture from the Provincial Academy of Agricultural Sciences. He walked over to the dirt pit, rubbed some soil between his fingers, and said,
The topsoil is salty and alkaline.
but 50 centimeters down, it's mineral-rich red clay. Plus, the slope provides excellent drainage.
Ordinary peaches wouldn't survive here, but it's the absolute perfect match for the brand new cherries our academy just developed.
These cherries are delicate, so nobody in the village dares to touch them. But if we can solve the initial irrigation and improve the topsoil, their quality will completely crush anything else on the market. I hesitated. But improving the soil costs money, and I barely have enough left to buy the saplings.
If we're low on cash, there are ways around it. Yuan replied.
We can line the channels with reflective film and plant peas and alfalfa as green manure. Yuan laid out the plan systematically. I heard you have the technical skills and the drive to make things happen.
I can be your technical advisor for free.
I asked, puzzled. Why?
I'm bringing a new project to the grassroots level, and I need a successful demonstration site to complete my research.
It's mutually beneficial. He reached out his muddy hand, smiling brightly. So, dare to take a gamble with me?
At afternoon,
Yuan helped me redesign the irrigation ditches.
we worked until dark to finalize the water diversion route.
With his guidance, a huge weight was finally lifted from my chest. To save money, I drove to town overnight to haul back the cheapest irrigation pipes and laid them along the ditches under the moonlight. I kept working until 3 in the morning and only managed to catch a quick nap. Once we turn on the water tomorrow morning, my comeback will officially begin. But when the first light of dawn hit the barren beach, what I saw made my blood run cold. The pipes I had just finished laying last night were completely destroyed. I stood by the ditch, anger rushing straight to my head. The main water pipes I had spent all night laying now lay in the mud like gutted snakes. Every single meter, there was a clean, sharp slash. Every drop of the diverted water had leaked out completely, carving deep gullies into the dirt. This was definitely cut with a knife. Someone was playing dirty. Just then, Yuan arrived on his bike. The blueprints fell to the ground. What on earth is going on? I grit my teeth in rage. In Liushu village, nobody would do this except Sun Chang. That bastard is trying to completely ruin me and force me out. Let's call the police. This is deliberate sabotage. It's no use, I said, stopping him. I forced myself to calm down. There are no security cameras on that barren wasteland, and it rained lightly last night. Any footprints or evidence are completely washed away. Even if the police come, they won't be able to arrest anyone. Then what do we do? Without water, how are we supposed to treat this soil? The pipes might be broken, but I refuse to let them beat us. As long as there's breath left in me, this land will definitely grow crops. He looked into my bloodshot eyes and nodded heavily. The agricultural store in town has spare pipes. I'll go get them. That night, using flashlights, we repapped the whole field to prevent another sabotage. Yuan suggested covering the pipes with gravel and thorny brambles and finally burying them under the soil. This wouldn't affect the drainage, and knives wouldn't be able to pierce through them anymore. Looking at him, a city researcher covered in mud and water, I became even more determined to succeed. How much are you still short on for startup capital? He asked during a break. Less than 10,000 yuan, I replied. It's not even enough to buy the cheapest rootstock seedlings. Don't buy cheap stuff, he said. Come with me tomorrow morning to the county's premium fruit breeding center. As long as you meet the requirements, you can apply for top-tier saplings for free. The next day, full of hope, I rushed to the fruit seedling market to buy grafting supplies. Suddenly, a nauseating voice sneered behind me. Sun Qiang was actually here too. Boss, I'll take this entire batch of anti-freeze film and nutrient blankets. How much does it come to? That will be 3,500 in total. This year's new breathable film is highly effective. Hold on, I'll pay 4,000 for this batch. And buy the whole lot. An arrogant voice suddenly cut in. I whipped around. I saw Xingxiang swaggering in with his lackeys, clutching a leather briefcase under his arm. His face was slick with grease and arrogance. Well, if it isn't Boss Lin. Do you actually plan to grow crops on that rocky wasteland? Are you really trying to get things done with cheap plastic sheets like these? I suppressed the urge to smash his face in. First come, first serve, I snapped. If you can cough up 5,000, I'll let you have it right now. Just as I was about to turn, a fair, slender hand presses down on my shoulder. Since Boss Said loves buying leftovers and scraps, why don't we just let him have them? Wow, Yuan has changed into a sharp, professional outfit. Who's this beauty? Why are you hanging around with a broke loser like him? Why don't you come work at my orchard instead? The cheap junk in this low-end market isn't worthy of what we're going to plant. The place I'm taking you, all agricultural supplies are completely free. Stop bluffing! The best agricultural supplies in the entire county are right here. Have you even heard of the County Quality Fruit Breeding Center? Seeing Xingxing's face turn pale with anger gives me a sudden wave of satisfaction. But little did I know, that breeding center was about to blow my mind. And the requirements to apply for the saplings were so brutal, they could drive anyone to despair. As our car drives into the County Quality Fruit Breeding Center, I am completely blown away by the sight in front of me. Yuan leads me into the office building with complete confidence.
And knocks on Jam's office door.
Chief Zhang is a gaunt old man in his 50s.
Research G, what brings you to my office today?
Yuan pushes me forward and says, Chief Zhang, I brought a friend to apply for our subsidized cherry saplings this year. Young man, this is a highly delicate variety. How many mu of land do you have?
Are your greenhouses fully equipped?
I take a deep breath. 300 new.
Over in Lishu village.
We don't have greenhouses yet.
It's the saline cockily wasteland near the stream.
Basically just barren land.
This is absurd, Xiao Ye. You're making a complete mockery of a national support project. Those saplings cost dozens of yuan each. Planting them in saline cockily soil is just sending them to their graves. Absolutely not. No way. Absolutely not.
Chief Zhang, please don't jump to conclusions just yet.
Yuan calmly pulls a thick stack of documents from her bag. Take a look at this, Chief Zhang. Skeptically, he takes the file and flips through a few pages.
Finally, pushing up his reading glasses, he asks, "Did you really dig this irrigation ditch all by yourself? With your bare hands?"
As long as I can keep these trees alive, I put my very life on the line.
Chief Zhang stares at me, silent for a solid minute. Suddenly, he snaps the folder shut, stands up and says, "Talk is cheap.
I've seen plenty of armchair experts.
This afternoon, I'm going down to your land to see it for myself. If you can't,
Don't even dream of taking a single sapling away."
3 p.m. The sun was so scorching hot, it could melt you alive.
Chu rode Anisha's car and actually made it out to that godforsaken desolate wasteland in Lishu village.
Just then, not far away,
Sun Chang, who was passing by while patrolling his own orchard, caught sight of them.
He immediately strutted over with a few of his lackeys. With a smug sneer he couldn't even hide, he mocked, "Oh, thank you, Yuan. You actually brought an expert to look at this dead land? My dear expert, you'd better look closely. Not even a single blade of grass can grow in this dump. Don't let this punk swindle you out of government subsidy money."
Chief Zhang completely ignored him.
Wearing a straw hat,
He trudged deep into the wasteland. These trenches are indeed very well laid out.
it definitely shows a solid foundation from the Academy of Agricultural Sciences. But why did you cover your irrigation pipes with all these thorny brambles and jagged rocks?
Isn't that completely redundant and just going to block future maintenance?
Chief Zhang, this is to keep the vermin out. To protect this plot of land, I had no other choice but to do this. He stood up, brushing the dirt off his hands, and let out a heavy sigh. You're a practical man who gets things done, and you've got a sharp mind.
Xiaoyao, you've got an excellent eye.
Leaving this land in his hands, he might actually turn it into something big.
Sun Shum snorted coldly from the side.
Turned on his heel and walked away. Lin Yuan, I've approved your application. I'll start by approving 300 acres worth of premium saplings for you. The breeding setter will cover all the matching organic fertilizer. But if the survival rate doesn't reach 90% by the end of the year, I will hold you strictly accountable.
Thank you, Chief Zhang.
Don't worry.
I, Lin Yuan, always keep my word.
The saplings were successfully brought back to the village, and the entire village went wild. But just as I was filled with hope and getting ready to plant them,
Nishan showed up holding a new soil analysis report.
her face deathly pale. Lin Zhong, we have a massive problem. We can't plant these saplings. We can't plant them? Why? I stared at the truck fully loaded with saplings, and my heart instantly jumped into my throat. There had been a massive torrential rainstorm last night. Well, now the soil's pH levels were completely off the charts. If we planted the saplings now, their roots would burn, and they would die off in droves. I stared intensely at those vibrant green saplings. There was no other way. Wait, yes there was. Back in grad school, my mentor had developed a complex microbial formula, a special biofertilizer designed specifically for this exact situation. Whatever materials we need, I'll go buy them. Whatever needs to be done, I'll do it. The next 3 days and 3 nights were absolute living hell. To finish treating the soil before the saplings withered, I spent my very last few thousand yuan to buy the raw ingredients. Since we didn't have a fermentation tank, I dug a massive pit right there on the barren wasteland, lined it with a tarp, and went without a mixer. I stripped to the waste and used a shovel to manually mix it, scoop by painful scoop. The stench from the fermentation was incredibly pungent, and my hands were covered in over a dozen bloody blisters. When they popped, the sweat made them sting like hell. But Yu Xuan stayed by my side the entire time. On the morning of the 4th day,
As the first ray of sunlight hit the barren wasteland,
the fermentation was finally complete. We tilled our custom biofertilizer into the soil and carefully planted our first batch of purple jade saplings. Then, a miracle happened. Just 1 week later, those saplings, which should have withered in the saline alkali soil, had not only taken deep root, but they were even sprouting fresh green buds. Looking at those young fruit trees swaying in the wind, I finally smiled for the first time in ages. But I had no idea that in the neighboring orchard, a pair of jealous, venomous eyes was already secretly targeting my thriving land. 1 month later, my barren wasteland had completely transformed. Not only did all 300 acres of cherry trees survive, but they were growing twice as fast as the local trees. This news spread through Lishu village like wildfire. When the villagers passed by my wasteland, they weren't laughing anymore. Their eyes were filled with absolute shock, and this completely struck a nerve with Sun Chang. That afternoon, while I was checking the drip irrigation system in the field, Sun Qiu strolled over with his hands behind his back, a dark scowl on his face.
because he was too cheap to buy proper pesticide. His orchard had recently been hit by pests. A massive patch of his leaves had turned yellow, leaving the place looking completely dead. It stood in stark, miserable contrast to the vibrant, thriving life on my side. The sheer envy in his eyes was almost tangible, ready to erupt like molten rock. Sung Cheung gave a fake, sarcastic smile and kicked a clod of dirt on the edge of the field.
Well, look at that. Boss Lee's crappy saplings actually survived.
I completely ignored him. I just kept my head down and continued working. Sung Ching's eyes darted around my field like a thief. Finally, his gaze landed on a few empty sacks piled in the corner. Those were the leftover ingredient bags from the organic biofertilizer Yuan had mixed for me. On them, you could faintly see the faded, torn words, Bacillus subtilis. Sung Chang's eyes shifted slyly. No wonder your soil suddenly became so rich, he said. Turns out you've been secretly using some special chemical. Lin Yuan, don't say I didn't warn you. If you force these fruit trees to grow with random chemicals, the fruit they produce could end up killing someone. This is Kiko-friendly biofertilizer from the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences. I shot back. It is 10,000 times cleaner than those cheap, low-grade chemical fertilizers you use.
Have you seen enough? I glared at him coldly.
If you have, then get out of my sight.
Sun Chu was utterly shut down.
His face turned dark with rage. He gave me a vicious glare. After staring intensely at those empty bags for a few more seconds, he finally turned and left.
Trying to mess with me? I'll make you spit out every single thing you took from me.
I faintly heard him muttering under his breath as he walked away, and my heart instantly sank. A terrible sense of foreboding washed over me.
Knowing Feng Chao,
He was definitely up to no good. That very night, to stop Sung Qiang from doing something desperate, I spent a few $100 in town that night to buy 2 infrared security cameras. I carefully hid them in the branches at both ends of the orchard. I wanted to see exactly what kind of dirty tricks he was going to pull next. It was a dark and windy night on the barren wasteland. The only sound was the rustling of leaves in the wind. At 2 in the morning, I was still wide awake in my shack. Instead, I was staring intently at the live camera feed on my phone screen. Sure enough, a sneaky, dark shadow appeared at the edge of the screen. Although the footage was a bit blurry, who else could it be but Sun Qiao? With that familiar build and his slightly limping right leg, he was carrying a large white plastic bucket, keeping off the main path. He slipped in quietly through a ditch on the side of the wasteland. He looked around cautiously, and after making sure no one was around, he walked straight toward the reservoir in the middle of the orchard, which I used for storing water and mixing soluble fertilizer. He unscrewed the cap of the plastic bucket. A pungent smell of pesticides practically drifted through the screen. I could easily tell it was highly concentrated herbicide. If that made its way through the drip irrigation system to the roots of every single tree, these 300 new of my hard work would turn into a barren, lifeless wasteland overnight.
Sun Qiao sneered.
And poured an entire bucket of herbicide right into the reservoir. Then, he tossed the empty bucket into the nearby weeds and slipped away. My blood was boiling with rage. I wanted so badly to rush out and beat him to a pulp right then and there, but I clenched my teeth. If I went out now, it would only count as an attempt. He'd get locked up for a few days, then walk free. That wouldn't even hurt him where it hurts. I wanted to take him down for good. Once I was sure he was far enough away, I immediately grabbed my flashlight and stepped out of the shed. I put on a pair of gloves and carefully bagged the empty bucket he had tossed away. It had his clear fingerprints all over it. Next, I shut off the main valve connecting the reservoir to the drip irrigation system. I drained the contaminated water overnight and thoroughly scrubbed the reservoir clean. The next morning, the sun rose as usual, and my orchard was still bursting with life. Just then, Sun Qiao sauntered over, hands in his pockets, thinking and strutting like he owned the place. His face was plastered with a smug grin, clearly dying to watch the drama unfold. Behind him were a few nosy villagers looking for entertainment. Well, well, Lin Yuan, Sun Qiang called out. I had a dream last night. I dreamed your entire orchard had withered and died. I was so worried about you that I just had to come by first thing in the morning to check on you. But the moment he reached the edge of the field and saw those lush, vibrant green leaves, the grin on his face instantly froze. I pulled out a white plastic bucket from behind my back, slammed it down right at his feet and said, "Hey, Kyun, coming all this way in the middle of the night to bring me fertilizer. You really went through a lot of trouble." So, should we head to the police station now? Or should we settle this debt at the village committee? Sun Qiao stared at the white plastic bucket at my feet. The smugness on his face instantly vanished. He went pale as a sheet. What nonsense are you talking about? Who knows where that piece of trash came from? What does it have to do with me? To the body, cash shop. I let out a cold laugh and pulled out my phone, turning the volume all the way up. I tacked on last night's surveillance footage. Even though it was dark, his signature, limping gait, and his face, looking around right after dumping the chemical, were captured crystal clear under the infrared night vision. Onlookers from the village immediately erupted. Isn't that Xiangzi? What the hell is he dumping into someone else's water tank in the dead of night? What a wicked thing to do. Isn't this literally cutting off a man's livelihood?
Sung Chua.
This herbicide jug is covered in your fingerprints. I stared him down, my eyes locking onto his, sabotaging production and business. That's a minimum of 3 years in prison.
Do you really want to rot behind bars?
想清抗捆比盘也
Cold sweat drenched his forehead, dripping down his face. He suddenly grabbed my arm, baking in a hushed, desperate voice.
Lin Yuan. Brother Lin.
I lost my head for a second. Please, whatever you do, don't call the police. Let's settle this privately.
We can settle it privately, right? Please?
Sure, I sneered, shoving his hand off of me. I pulled out the bill I had prepared beforehand from my pocket. The electricity bill for draining the water tank, the labor cost for cleaning it, plus the loss of the specialized bacterial cultures Yeshuan custom made for me, and the compensation for the stress caused to these 300 acres of fruit trees. I'll rave the change. That's $12,000 in total. 12,000.
想去用谁拉个开，又谁喝的他也编不到。
That's extortion. Fine, then I'll just call the police. I made a move to dial the phone.
No, don't!
Sun Chang gritted his teeth in pure rage, and with a trembling hand, transferred $12,000 to me. Once I got the money, I forced him to sign a settlement agreement right in front of everyone. Sun Kyum slunk away with his tail between his legs. But the moment he turned around, I caught the venomous, viper-like glare flashing in his eyes. He would never let this go. Armed with the $12,000 in compensation, I immediately asked Yushan to go to the city and buy a batch of even higher-grade water-soluble fermented bacteria, preparing to give the fruit trees an extra boost just as they were entering their crucial bearing stage. Meanwhile, on the other side, Sun Kyung became the laughingstock of the entire Lishu village. Not only did he lose his money, but even the lackeys who used to follow him around found him too embarrassing to associate with and started avoiding him. Late at night, several empty liquor bottles lay scattered across Sun Xiang's table. Sun Xiang chopped down more than half a bottle of hard liquor. His eyes were bloodshot, staring through my orchard like a rabid beast.
Lin Yuan, you're just a worthless dog working for me.
How dare you embarrass me in public and make me pay? Sun Q violently smashed his liquor bottle onto the ground. I'm going to ruin you tonight. I'll show you exactly who runs Lishu village. He stumbled to his feet, rummaged through the equipment shed in the backyard, and pulled out a metal can full of gasoline. After stuffing a lighter into his pocket, he snuck toward my orchard once again, under the cover of darkness. This time, his target wasn't the outer trees on the perimeter, but my newly built supply shed. Not only did it house expensive farming equipment, but it also stored the vital fermented fertilizer that Yashuan had just mixed for my tree's most critical phase. He unscrewed the gasoline can and poured it all around the wooden door and the base of the shed's walls. With a sharp click of his lighter, a flame instantly erupted. In the dead of night, a fuffled explosion shattered the peace of Liushu village. By the time I bolted awake in my makeshift shack, the towering flames had already painted half the night sky red. My supply shed was completely engulfed in a sea of fire. It's on fire, Lin Yuan. Wake up, because Yushuan had to record data in the fields tonight. He was staying in the mobile cabin at the other end of the orchard. Right now he was running over, screaming in sheer panic. I rushed out of my shack, and a scorching wave of heat blasted me in the face. The supply shed was already completely devoured by the raging fire. That shed held a fertilizer for the tree's fruiting season. If our most vital nutrients burn to ashes, all our hard work over the last 6 months will be completely ruined. Call the fire department, quick! Without a second thought, I dashed back into my shack, ripped down a thick cotton quilt, sulked it in the water trough, and threw it over myself.
Lin Yuan, are you crazy?
Yanswing screamed in absolute horror from outside. You're going to get yourself killed. Thick, suffocating smoke billowed inside the burning shed, making it almost impossible to breathe. The wooden beams crackled and popped as they burned, on the verge of collapsing at any second. Summoning every ounce of strength in my body, I desperately grabbed the 7 or 8 bags of vital fertilizer stacked at the very back, dragging it out with all my strength. The exact moment I dragged the last bag out and collapsed onto the muddy ground. Boom! The warehouse roof completely caved in. I lay there on the ground, gasping for air. Tian threw himself onto me, sobbing hysterically as he held me tight. He desperately checked my arm, which had been badly singed by the flames. Right then, in the flickering light of the fire, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of the slope just outside the orchard. A familiar figure was limping, running like mad toward the village. The fire trucks arrived quickly and put out the raging flames. Once morning came, I was digging through the debris by the warehouse's outer wall when my foot hit a metal bucket with melted edges. It still reeked of pungent gasoline. With bloodshot eyes, Yushuan spat. It has to be Sun Zhan. Let's take this gas can to the police right now. But I grabbed his arm to stop him. Instead, I reached into a hidden tree branch near the ruins and pulled out a tiny, fingernail-sized camera. Ever since he tried to poison my crops last time,
I'd spent a fortune on this ultra-high-definition pinhole camera.
it was fully fireproof and explosion-proof. I popped the memory card into my phone, opened the video, and there was Sun Xiang, clear as day, lighting the fire and throwing the bucket. It even captured his panicked, pathetic face as the flames singed his eyebrows and he scrambled away. By morning, most of the warehouse was nothing but a charred, blackened ruin. The villagers started showing up to help clear the debris. Sun Sung, putting on a fake act, squeezed through the crowd and sauntered over.
Oh my.
Brother Lin Yuan,
How on earth did this happen? Did you mess up the wiring or something? Maybe a short circuit started the fire? He let out a heavy sigh.
but he couldn't hide the smug smirk in his eyes. Man, you must have lost tens of thousands, right?
Looks like you won't be able to keep this orchard running. I brushed the black ash off my hands, turned around, and locked my eyes dead onto him. Sun Chu, where exactly were you last night at 1:15 when the fire started?
The smirk on Sun Chang's face instantly froze.
Forcing a defensive laugh, he muttered, I was fast asleep at home. What, are you trying to pin this on me? I leaned in close to his ear and whispered in a voice only he could hear. The guy who set the fire last night was wearing white sneakers. And in this entire village, you're the only one who owns a pair. Oh, and by the way, that pinhole camera I hid in the tree behind the warehouse, the quality is absolutely top tier.
乡情是情查帮地，歪领了沙滩。
As a look of sheer, absolute terror flashed in his eyes,
He stumbled back 2 steps, staring at me like he'd just seen a ghost. He stammered for a while, but couldn't get a single word out. Finally, he spun around and fled in sheer panic. Confused, Yisuan turned to Lin Yuan and asked, We have such rock-solid evidence. Why not just call the cops and have him locked up? I stared cold-bloodedly at Sun Chang's pathetic, retreating figure and sneered. Locking him up now will only get him 3 to 5 years at most. I'm going to hold on to this proof
And wait until he's at his absolute highest and most arrogant.
to deliver a fatal, crushing blow. 1 month later, this batch of cherries, which had barely survived the brink of death, finally reached their first harvest. When the county's official quality report was delivered, it sent shockwaves right through the entire city's fruit industry. Early morning in the orchard, the air was thick with a uniquely rich, sweet aroma. Glistening, deep red cherries hung heavily from the branches like polished agates.
they were almost as big as small plums, their skins gleaming with an irresistible gloss under the morning sun.
Jishan held the official lab report from the County Bureau of Agriculture. He came running over, breathless with excitement. His voice was literally shaking. Lin Yuan, you actually did it! The sugar levels hit an unbelievable 22%. The firmness of the fruit. And the anthocyanin levels have completely shattered every industry standard. This is a rare, ultra-premium grade. It absolutely destroys any of those top-tier imported cherries. This meant that this barren land of mine, the very one the entire village had mocked as dead soil, had just produced a literal gold mine. Right then, a black Mercedes G-Wagon pulled up to the orchard entrance, kicking up a massive cloud of dust. Up stepped Boss Chin, a major distributor supplying high-end supermarkets and Michelin-starred restaurants in the capital, flanked by 2 sharp-suited assistants. A few days ago, Yushuan had sent samples to several major distributors, and Boss Chen was the very first to sniff out the opportunity. You must be Boss Lin, right? I've heard a lot about you. Boss Ken took off his sunglasses, wasting no time on pleasantries. He walked straight up to one of the cherry trees, plucked a single cherry, gave it a quick wipe, and popped it into his mouth. It took just 1 bite, and his eyes lit up instantly. He quickly plucked 4 or 5 more, his face growing more and more ecstatic with every bite. Suddenly, Boss Tian spun back around. It's incredibly crisp, sweet, and bursting with juice. Not a single hint of sourness. The texture is so firm and perfect. Boss Lin, I'm buying out this entire batch. Every single one. Right now, the wholesale price for this grade of imported fruit on the market is 51 a pound. I'll give you 60. I'll take as much as you have. Paid in full. Up front, the surrounding villagers who were helping with the harvest gasped in shock.
60 yuan a pound?
Just how much money would this 300 mu of land bring in? Facing this astronomical temptation, I simply shook my head. Boss Chin, I can sell them to you for 60 yuan. But I have one extremely strict condition. The surrounding villagers helping with the harvest gasped in shock. 61 a pound? With the current yield on the trees,
Lin Yuan's 300 mu of land will sell for an astronomical price of several million yuan.
faced with a fortune beyond my wildest dreams, I didn't let it go to my head. Instead, I looked straight at Boss Chin and said resolutely, Boss Chin, I can sign for the purchase price of 61. But I have 2 conditions. Boss Scan's interest was piqued. Boss Lin, please, go ahead. First, the packaging of this batch of fruit and all future products must be printed with the origin label of Lishu Village Ecological Orchard. Second, I am about to establish an ecological farming cooperative in the village. As long as it is our cooperative's produce, you must give us priority and buy it at the highest market rate. Boss Tian was stunned. Having traveled far and wide buying fruit for so many years, this was the first time he had ever seen someone pass up the chance to make easy money from a monopoly and insist on bringing the entire village along for the ride. Boss Lin, you're bringing the whole village in just to destroy my leverage to drive down prices. Boss Q burst out laughing. Then he gave a thumbs up. All right, I agree to these conditions, just for your sheer vision. And this fruit quality that blows the rest of the country away. Let's sign the contract. I'll have my team transfer a 30% advance payment to you right away.
Ding.
A text message notification chimed on my phone.
Staring at that long string of zeros.
I tightly gripped Yusuan's hand. My eyes welled up with tears. 3 years? I have finally turned my life around. The news spread like it had grown wings. Within half a day, it had spread across all the neighboring villages.
Meanwhile, Sun Chu was sitting in his own nearly barren orchard.
Facing the darkest day of his life.
The next day, I held a meeting in the village committee courtyard to officially establish the Lushu Village Ecological Farming Cooperative. The courtyard was packed with people, standing on the steps. I looked down at the crowd of familiar faces. Aunts, uncles, elders. Over 6 months ago, I brought 50,000 yuan to lease that barren sailing Akali land. Everyone laughed and called me a madman. But today, I pulled off this impossible task without spending a single cent. My cherries actually sold for 60 yuan a pound. The crowd below fell dead, silent. Every single person's eyes turned red. It was the look of pure excitement and desperate longing. I knew they had been farming their entire lives, without ever making any real money. So, I announced at the top of my lungs, from this day on, our cooperative is officially established. If you're willing to follow me, I will provide improved saplings from our agricultural experts and full technical guidance, completely free of charge. As long as your fruit meets the standards, I guarantee I'll buy and sell every single piece. I won't take a single cent of profit from your hard work. If we're going to get rich, our entire Lishu village is getting rich together. Brother Juan, count me in. I'm with you. I'm putting all 20 acres of my land into this. Think, your uncle used to laugh at you and make fun of you, and I want to sincerely apologize to you. Count my family in too. Instantly, the crowd erupted in excitement. Everyone scrambled, pushing and shoving, to press their thumbprints onto the registration list. Meanwhile, hiding behind a massive tree outside the courtyard, Sung Jiang gritted his teeth, glaring at me as I stood in the center, completely surrounded by the worshipping crowd. His face was utterly distorted with pure, burning jealousy.
Because he was too stingy to buy decent pesticides.
His own apple orchard had developed a severe case of ring rot, and the fruit had completely rotted right on the trees. Nobody would buy them, not even for 50 cents a pound. Seeing me basking in glory and riding high, Sin Chung wanted nothing more than to skin me alive. But before he could even fly into a rage, a black Santana suddenly screeched to a halt right in front of his orchard gate. Several thuggish-looking men got out and immediately blocked his front entrance. Sung Chung, get your miserable ass out here right now. Director Shou from the town's fertilizer plant, backed by a few debt collectors, cornered Stone Chung right in his own yard. You owe our plant 80,000 yuan for the fertilizer. It's already 3 months overdue. If you don't pay up today, I will immediately file a petition with the court for asset seizure and have this pathetic orchard and your house locked down. Sun Jiang's face turned completely pale with fear. He bowed and scraped, quickly offering a cigarette. Director Shou, please, just give me another 2 weeks. My batch of late harvest red Fuji apples is almost ready to be picked. Once I sell them, I swear I'll pay you back every single cent. Sell them? Those rotten apples of yours are only fit to feed pigs. Actually, even pigs wouldn't touch that garbage. I'm giving you exactly 3 more days. If you don't have the money by then, we'll see each other in court. After Director Zhou stormed off, Cao Zhe's wife Li Shu collapsed onto the floor, weeping and wailing hysterically. I can't live like this anymore. Just look at Lin Yuan. He's driving a fancy Mercedes and helping the entire village get rich. But look at you. Staying with you. We're even going to lose our house. Shut the hell up. Don't you dare bring up Lin Yuan's name. Sungkyu's eyes turned blood red with rage, like a starving, cornered wolf. He paced back and forth in the yard like a maniac. His mind was filled with nothing but images of Lin Yuan's branches, heavy with bright, red, juicy cherries. Why? That Lin Yuan is nothing but a dirty peasant who used to work for me. One grounds. He's nothing but a lowlife who used to work for me. Sun Tu muttered, gnashing his teeth in pure hatred. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. A vicious, insane idea popped into his head. Late that night, under the cover of a pitch-black, windy night, Sung Kyung grabbed a flashlight and a heavy iron crowbar, and like a ghost, he slipped back into my orchard. This time, his target was my newly built brick office. With a sharp click, he pried open the office door. Looking around guiltily, Song Chang slipped inside. It flicked on his flashlight and began frantically tearing through my desk. It didn't take long for his eyes to lock onto an open notebook. Written in bold across the page was, "Top secret formula for rapid sizing cherry fertilizer." Below it was a detailed breakdown of the mix. Urea, 60%, potassium compound fertilizer, 10%, and unfermented raw chicken manure, 30%. I'm going to be rich.
I finally found it!
Sun Qiwang was shaking with pure excitement. He quickly whipped out his phone and took a crystal clear photo of the entire page. The secret formula. My half-dead late-season apple trees are definitely going to be saved. Thief! Catch the thief! Someone's in the office! Suddenly, the night watchman, Uncle Liu, bellowed from outside.
Sun Qiu jumped out of his skin.
He snatched his phone and scrambled frantically out of the back window, diving headfirst into the cornfield to make his escape. A few minutes later, Yingzhen and I rushed into the office.
Boss Lin.
I was too slow. I couldn't catch him. And I don't even know what that thief managed to steal. Was it anything important? Uncle Liu was so anxious. He kept slapping his thigh in frustration. I walked over to the desk and looked at my messy, rummaged notebook. Instead of getting angry. So think of it, it's supposed that just was just a cold, mocking smirk played on my lips.
Yishuan glanced at the notebook.
Instantly figured it out. You did this on purpose, didn't you? Leaving that discarded experimental formula on the desk? I nodded slowly. That formula has an insanely high ratio of urea, mixed with unfermented, raw chicken manure. If you put that directly onto the soil, it will release massive amounts of toxic ammonia gas and extreme heat. Early the next morning, Sun Qiu, who knows where he got the money from, probably loan shark, bought a massive truckload of urea and raw chicken manure. He went completely wild, pouring it directly onto the roots of his apple trees. In his dreams, he was already imagining the apples growing massive and selling them for a fortune. But 3 days later, a devastating disaster struck. At dawn, Sun Chang rushed to his orchard, trembling with excitement. He fully expected to see his apples ballooning in size. But the moment he reached the edge of the field,
A suffocating, pungent stench of ammonia hit him right in the face.
making him choke and cough violently. And when he finally saw the absolute devastation in the orchard, his knees buckled, and he fell straight onto his knees in the mud. The apples, which, though diseased, had still been hanging on the trees, were now scattered all over the ground, like a fallen hailstorm, smashed to absolute pieces. Overnight, every single leaf on the trees had withered, yellowed, and curled up, looking as if they had been scorched by a raging fire. He lunged forward and desperately clawed at the soil. The roots were completely blackened and rotten. The roots were burned to a crisp. The entire crop was ruined. How could this happen? This is impossible.
I followed Leon's secret formula to the letter.
Sun Qiu screamed in sheer despair.
His eyes bulging out of his head. Dr. Wu, the local vet, walked by, holding his nose against the stench. He took one look, shook his head, and said, "Changzi, are you out of your mind? Doping this much urea and raw manure in the middle of this blistering heat? Even the gods couldn't save these trees. They're completely burned to a crisp. This entire orchard of yours is completely ruined. You might as well dig them up by the roots and use them for firewood. It's all over. 100 acres of orchard turned into a complete wasteland." Sun Qiang slumped onto the ground, sitting helplessly among a sea of rotten apples. Suddenly, reality hit him like a ton of bricks. He had been set up by Lin Yuan. That was never some secret recipe. It was a death warrant. Lin Yuan, you set me up. I'll kill you. I'm going to kill you.
相熊傻爱，知本了屁股谁惧？
He scrambled to his feet and ran back home, stumbling all the way. A court summons and a demand letter from loan sharks slammed onto Sun Qiu's table at the exact same time. His wife, Li Su, packed her bags overnight and fled, left with absolutely nothing. His life completely ruined. A manic, desperate look of death flashed in his eyes.
The night wind blew cold.
Clutching a cold butcher's knife inside his jacket, Sun Qiu sneaked up to the gate of my orchard like a restless, vengeful ghost. His eyes were bloodshot, and his mind was consumed by a single, murderous thought. Kill Lin Yuan. He was going to take him down, even if it cost him his own life. But when he finally stood before my land, he froze in utter shock. What used to be a barren, desolate wasteland was now enclosed by massive brick walls. Above the massive gate, the neon sign for Yuanshuan Eco Orchard glowed as bright as day. Inside the newly built guardhouse, 2 security guards, both former military veterans, were closely monitoring the security screens.
Inside, neat rows of thriving fruit trees stood tall, radiating a vibrant life that drove him to utter despair.
Sun Qiu reached for the knife hidden in his jacket, but his legs began to tremble uncontrollably. He suddenly realized he didn't even have what it took to take Lin Yuan down with him. Lin Yuan was now the wealthiest man in the entire village, a star entrepreneur backed by the local government. And what was he? A pathetic loser who couldn't even escape his loan sharks? A homeless, beaten dog. The massive gulf between their social statuses felt like a mountain, crushing the very last shred of his desperate courage. With a loud clank, the butcher's knife slipped from his hand and fell to the ground. Sun Qiu collapsed into the mud, burying his face in his hands and sobbing hysterically. It was the sound of a man completely broken, resigning himself to his fate. Early the next morning, the loudspeakers of Lishu village blared, echoing through every corner of the town. Today was our cooperative's very first dividend payout day. But what absolutely no one expected was that Sun Chang, who had been missing for 3 whole days, stumbled into the venue wearing nothing but filthy, tattered rags. The village committee courtyard was buzzing with festive joy. On a long table draped in bright red cloth, neat stacks of cash were piled high like a mini mountain. Last month, our cooperative's total sales reached 438,000 yuan. After deducting agricultural supplies and logistics costs, our net profit is 126,000 yuan. Now we're handing out the cash based on everyone's shares. I held the ledger in my hands, reading out the names through a megaphone. Suddenly, a villager shouted, "Lin Yuan, following you is 1,000,000 times better than farming for a lifetime. Just from dividends alone, my family got an extra 10,000 yuan this month." Old Uncle Wang counted his bills, his hands shaking with sheer excitement. He was grinning from ear to ear. But just as everyone was celebrating, a figure reeking of a foul stench, with hair like a messy bird's nest, fell to his knees at the bottom of the steps with a heavy thud.
Lin Yuan. It's me, Sun Chu. Boss Li.
I was wrong. I really, truly know I was wrong.
Sun Qin begged, kowtowing repeatedly.
His forehead slamming against the stone pavement with a sickening thud.
The court seized my orchard.
And my house. Everything is sealed. Even Li Xiu ran away. I haven't had a single decent meal in 3 days. Please, I beg you, take me in. Let me join the cooperative. I don't even need a share. Just give me a bite to eat. I'll sweep the orchards. I'll shovel manure. I'll do anything. The villagers stared at him, their eyes filled with a mix of deep hatred and pity. I slowly walked down the steps, looking down at him coldly.
Sun Tu.
Do you remember how you kicked me out of my own place back then? Do you remember when you poured herbicide into my reservoir? And when you set fire to my warehouse in the middle of the night? I paused, my voice turning ice cold. I am no saint. You didn't come here to beg today because your conscience finally kicked in. You came because you have absolutely nowhere else to go. If I were the one who went bankrupt today, you would be laughing louder than anyone. I don't feed ungrateful wolves. Sun Shou was dragged out by the village security guards, limp like a spineless heap of mud. Right then, Yu Shen burst into the venue, waving a freshly signed blockbuster contract. Our fruit has just triggered an absolute historic sales boom. Lushing, the biggest premium supermarket in Lin Yuan City, has agreed to put our produce right in their premium fresh zone. We can start the trial sales today.
Sean waved the contract in the air.
Under to mask the sheer excitement written all over his face. That very afternoon, we set up a tasting booth right in the most prominent spot of the supermarket. The surrounding shelves were lined exclusively with imported cherries priced at 80 to 90 yuan a pound. At first, the city shoppers weren't buying it when they saw Li Shu Village printed on our packaging. Can domestic cherries even be sweet? The packaging looks fancy, but I bet it's all show and no substance. Man, please, give it a try. If it's not sweet, it's free. These are premium cherries grown on saline Kaukali soil using our patented eco-friendly biofertilizer. Absolutely no artificial ripening agents. One older woman, highly skeptical, took a bite. Her eyes instantly widened. Oh my, why is the flesh so crisp? It's so juicy. There's not a single hint of sourness. Do I want to see the Mindalacris to my terms? This is way better than the imported ones I bought last week. Give me 2 boxes. I want 5 pounds too. They're perfect for gifts. In just 2 short hours, 200 boxes of premium cherries we brought were completely sold out. Manager's son from the supermarket ran over, drenched in sweat. Mr. Lin, we need to restock. Fast. Your fruit just stole every single customer from the imported section. I'm going to clear out our prime central counter for you right away. Watching the crazy, chaotic sales scene unfold, I knew Liushu Village had finally made it big, but the yield from our 300 acres was nowhere near enough to keep up with this insane market demand. Returning to the village that night, I called an emergency village meeting and announced a decision that shook everyone to their core. Phase 2 of our cooperative officially starts next month. I'm going to lease another 500 acres of barren hills. As I dropped this bombshell on the crowd, the courtyard fell into a dead silence. Then, a thunderous roar of cheers erupted. And that's not all, I said, raising my hands to quiet the roaring crowd. My eyes swept over their honest, hard-working faces. For the second phase of our orchard, we need to hire 30 full-time agricultural workers. We'll give first priority to our fellow villagers right here at Laishu Village. The pay will match the standard rates of the factories in town. That's 5,000 yuan a month. Plus, I'll be providing full benefits, including Social Security and housing funds. Farmers like us, getting full benefits in Social Security? The old village chief, Wang Bo, was so excited his beard was practically trembling. With the tears welling up in his eyes, he choked out. Lin Yuan, my 2 sons are working all the way down south in an electronics factory. They barely come home twice a year, and the money they make doesn't even cover their rent. Can they come back and work for you? An auntie wiped away her tears and asked, her voice cracking with emotion. I nodded firmly.
Tell them to come back. Our Lilushu village is finally standing tall.
No matter how great it is out there, nothing beats staying in your own hometown.
Making a good living while being there for your parents. At that moment, I truly understood the real meaning of why I started this business. It all started with nothing but a bitter desire for revenge. But now, I had genuinely transformed this barren, impoverished land. I was changing the lives of dozens of families. Meanwhile, in a dark, abandoned haystack on the edge of the village,
Sak Chang sat gnawing on a cold, stale bun as the cheers from the broadcast echoed in his ears.
the desperate, lawless madness returned to his eyes. He glared fixedly at my cold storage facility, where the premium fruits were kept. He decided to pull off one last heist. Late at night, in the cold storage area,
It was so quiet that only the low hum of the compressors could be heard.
inside, 500 boxes of Wenshan premium cherries were ready to be shipped to the city supermarkets first thing in the morning. Every single cherry in this batch had been hand-picked for peak quality. Each box was priced at a whopping 200 yuan,
Making the total value 100,000 yuan.
This was the most critical order for our cooperative. This was pressed in all black. Sun Ching clutched a pair of hydraulic bolt cutters in his hand.
He knew the village inside out.
And needed one.
And you exactly where the breaker box was.
With swift, practiced movements, he snipped the power lines to the warehouse's outdoor security cameras.
He sneered. Lin Yuan.
You ruined my family and left me with nothing. So tonight, I'm taking your most precious cargo.
Uttering venomous curses under his breath.
He pried open the side door of the cold storage room with a crowbar.
A blast of freezing air hit him in the face. Squinting in the faint moonlight, he stared at the rows of beautifully packaged premium fruits.
Sun Q's eyes practically turned green with greed.
He couldn't wait to grab 2 boxes, spinning around, ready to slip away.
As long as he could sell these goods off to the local retail dealers at a low price, tonight, he'd have more than enough cash to flee to another province in style.
But the exact second he stepped 1 foot out of the cold storage door,
The floodlights all around suddenly flashed on in unison.
a blinding glare instantly engulfed him,
Searing his eyes so badly he couldn't even open them.
In sheer panic, Sun Qing dropped the fruit boxes and blocked the light with his hands.
only to hear a freezing cold voice coming from right in front of him, helping me move stock in the dead of night.
Why didn't you even say hello?
Out of the shadows, I emerged with the police and security guards, completely surrounding him.
Freeze! Police!
Several harsh flashlight beams crisscrossed over Sun Chang's face.
He let out a terrified shriek.
As the 2 boxes of premium cherries in his hands crashed to the ground, bright red cherries scattered and rolled everywhere.
I slowly stepped out from the darkness, flanked by 2 police officers and several security guards.
How did you know I'd come?
Some Qingjiang trembled, taking a step back.
He looked at me like you'd just seen a ghost.
I clearly cut the power lines.
Did you think I was still that naive kid you could push around 3 years ago?
I sneered, pointing to an extremely hidden black security camera at the top of the cold storage.
That security system
Is something Yushan specifically requested from the Academy of Agricultural Sciences. It has its own backup power supply and infrared sensors. The very second you snip those outer wires,
My phone received an alert.
相信是你不够。
And he slumped against the freezing metal door of the cold storage. He knew he was absolutely finished this time.
breaking and entering, grand theft, and the value of the stolen goods exceeded 100,000 yuan.
This wasn't something he could get away with after just a few days in detention. Lin Yuan.
Brother Lan, I was blinded by greed. Please, just give me a break. Spare me. I'll give all this fruit back to you. I won't steal anymore. I swear.
Sun Qiang sullenly fell to his knees with a heavy thud.
Slapping his own face as tears and snot poured down.
Looking at his pathetic, groveling face,
I didn't feel a single ounce of pity.
Officer Liu, who was leading the squad, immediately barked the order.
2 officers rushed forward instantly. With a cold metallic click, the handcuffs snapped onto Sun Qiusha's wrists, and they dragged him away.
Watching Sun Qiang being shoved into the police car, I stepped forward
And handed a thick file to Officer Liu.
Officer Liu, this folder doesn't just contain evidence of his theft tonight.
It also has everything he's done over the past 6 months.
Sabotaging our crops.
Poisoning. And committing arson. It's the complete ledger of his crimes.
it's time to settle all of them, once and for all.
Inside the town police station's interrogation room, the harsh, pale glare of the fluorescent light beat down on Sun Qiang's defeated face.
At first, he still clung to a shred of hope, stubbornly digging his heels in. He only admitted to wanting to steal some fruit tonight. He flatly denied the poisoning and arson, claiming Lin Yuan was slandering him. Stiffening his neck, Sun Qiang argued. That warehouse caught fire because of old wiring. It had nothing to do with me.
Why are you pinning this on me?
Right then,
Officer Liu sneered.
He slammed a tablet onto the table right in front of him and pressed play. On the screen, a limping figure was clearly visible in the dead of night, carrying a gas can, pouring fuel along the base of the wall, and setting it on fire. And that wasn't all. Officer Liu tossed a forensic report onto the table.
Suspect 散气.
The fingerprints lifted from the empty herbicide bottle near the orchard's reservoir are a perfect match to yours.
What do you have to say for yourself now? Sun Cheng's mental defense crumbled instantly. He stared blankly at the forensic report,
his entire body shaking like a leaf. Huge beads of sweat poured down his face, dripping onto the floor. I confess to everything, Sankyo muttered, looking as if the bones had been sucked right out of him. He collapsed weakly into the interrogation chair, covering his face and sobbing hysterically. By the time I finished my statement and walked out of the police station, dawn was just breaking.
a sliver of golden morning light tore through the gloomy night sky.
Spilling over the lands of Lishu village.
Ishan was waiting for me at the main gate. She handed me a cup of hot soy milk.
Did he confess? Yeah, everything. They took a deep breath of the cool morning air, feeling an unprecedented sense of relief washing over me.
3 years. 3 long years. And I finally settled this score once and for all.
1 week later, the County People's Court opened the trial for this serial agricultural sabotage case, which had shocked the entire county. But, sitting in the gallery of the courtroom, a woman appeared, plunging Sun Jiang into absolute despair.
The courtroom was dead silent and solemn.
Sun Jiang was wearing a sports jersey, his head shaved completely bald. As the bailiffs dragged him to the defendant's stand, he looked like he had aged 10 years.
Once the prosecutor finished reading his long list of crimes, the judge summoned the witness to the stand.
The heavy doors to the gallery swung open, and Sun Qiu's wife, Li Xiu, walked in. The moment Sun Jiang saw her, a flicker of hope flashed in his dull, lifeless eyes. He actually thought his wife was there to plead for mercy on his behalf. But Li Xiu didn't even spare him a single glance. She walked straight to the witness stand and said, "Your Honor, I testify that he wasn't just jealous of Lin Yuan's orchard.
He even took out high-interest loans from loan sharks just to ruin their land.
He poisoned all of our own fruit trees, too. He is a twisted, sick psychopath. I demand a court-ordered divorce immediately." Sun Jiang felt like he'd been struck by lightning. He just stood there, mouth agape, completely frozen. His very last shred of hope was instantly shattered. "All rise!" The judge banged his gavel down. "This court finds the defendant, Sun Qiu, guilty of sabotaging production and business operations, arson, and theft. For these combined offenses, you are sentenced to 4 years and 6 months in prison and are ordered to compensate the victim, Lin Yuan, for his economic losses." It's all over. Sun Cheng's legs buckled. If the bailiffs hadn't been holding him up, he would have collapsed right onto the floor. As they dragged him past my seat, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His lips trembled as 2 streams of regretful tears flowed down his cheeks. If only he had known it would end like this. But it was too late for regrets. He had completely ruined his own livelihood and utterly destroyed his own life. After Sun Qiang went to prison, his 100 acres of orchard, which had been ruined by pests and excessive chemical fertilizers, would put up for a court-ordered public auction. I thought I could easily snap up the land and merge it into our cooperative. But out of nowhere, a mysterious cutthroat bidder showed up at the auction. Inside the court's judicial auction room, I sat in the front row, tightly clutching the bidding paddle in my hand. Although Sun Cheng's 100 acres of land had already been ruined, burned to a crisp by his own chemical fertilizers, it sat right next to my Wenchuan ecological orchard. As long as I put in the effort to rehabilitate the soil, I could connect the entire planting belt across the village creek. The starting bid was incredibly low. Only 300,000. 350,000. Someone bid. I decisively raised my paddle. 400,000. Just then, a lazy voice drifted from the back row. I turned around to look. It was a stranger, in a high-end custom-tailored suit, wearing gold-rimmed glasses. Standing right beside him were 2 assistants. At a glance, you could tell he was some big-shot boss from the city. 450,000! I frowned, raising my paddle to keep bidding. 600,000! The man in the suit didn't even blink, instantly adding 150,000 to the bid. The entire room erupted. 600,000 for a wasteland where even grass won't grow? This is absolutely insane! I gritted my teeth and raised my paddle. 650,000. This was already all the liquid capital I could scrape together. The man in the suit finally spared me a glance, a contemptuous smirk playing on his lips. He calmly raised his paddle. 800,000. As the gavel fell, the suit guy won the land, crushing me with sheer financial power. Once the auction ended, Buck blimped him in the hallway. "Excuse me, boss. The roots in that plot are completely rotten, and the soil is heavily contaminated. What on earth are you trying to get by spending 800,000 on it? The man in the suit took off his glasses. He took a business card from his assistant's hand and offered it to me. You must be Mr. Lin, correct?
Let's get acquainted.
Zhao Kai, Regional Director of Green Garden Capital.
I didn't buy that land to plant trees.
I only bought it because it's right next to you. Zhao Kai patted my shoulder, his eyes flashing with intense predatory intent. Your cherries from Lishu Village are a massive hit in the city right now. I've set my sights on your cooperative, that plot of land.
It is merely my stepping stone into Liushu Village.
Next, think.
I'm going to show you what it really means when big money crushes you. As I watched Zhou Kai's Porsche drive away from the courthouse,
The dark shadow fell over my heart.
as soon as I got back to the village, I immediately told Yushan and the old village chief about Zhao Kai. I've heard of Green Origin Capital.
Yuan said, his brow tightly furrowed.
They specialize in aggressive agricultural takeovers in rural towns.
Once they buy a controlling stake,
The farmers are reduced to nothing but cheap labor.
and their organic farming standards will be completely thrown out the window in their ruthless pursuit of profit.
Then we absolutely cannot sell the cooperative to him. The old village chief banged his pipe hard against the table, his resolve unwavering. But we underestimated how fast and ruthlessly big money can corrupt the human heart. Just 1 week later,
将开始从小整土入了一种穷样的本事来，我家更喜。
They didn't bother to improve the soil.
Instead, they just bulldozed everything flat and threw up rows of cheap, corrugated iron shacks.
and hung up a sign that read, Green Origin Agriculture Purchase Station. Right after that, a piece of news sent shockwaves through Lishu Village. Did you hear?
That boss Zhao from Green Origin just put the word out. No matter whose fruit it is,
As long as you're willing to sign with him,
as long as you sell to him.
there is a 5 yuan price difference. That means you can make several thousand more per acre.
This sent massive shockwaves through the villagers, who had only just started to taste a bit of profit. At the end of the day, people go where the money is.
They followed me in the beginning for the money. So now, faced with a much higher offer, it was only natural that some of them were getting tempted. That evening, I was in my office going over the books when one of our very first cooperative members, Uncle Lu's son, Liu Gang, walked in with his head hung low, looking utterly ashamed.
Brother Yuan, Lu Gaon muttered, unable to look me in the eye.
He pulled a crumpled, faded withdrawal application out from his jacket.
The price Green Origin is offering, it's just too high.
My family just made a down payment on a house.
We desperately need the cash. I'm so sorry, but
I need to pull out of the cooperative. Looking at the crumpled withdrawal application in Li Gaon's hand, my heart sank with a bitter frustration. Genzi, the fruit on the trees isn't even fully ripe yet.
if you pull out of the cooperative now to sell to that boss Zhao next door,
Aren't you just ruining your own livelihood? I tried to suppress my anger as I pleaded with him. Zhao Gan kept his head down, not daring to look me in the eye. Brother Win. Boss Zhao said, as long as they're big and bright red, he'll take them. And he pays cash on the spot. My family desperately needs the money. I can't worry about anything else right now. I let out a heavy sigh. You can't force things when people's hearts aren't in it. If the farmers lose faith in this business, there is no holding them back. I signed my name on his withdrawal form,
With Liu Gang leading the way.
7 or 8 other short-sighted households who needed quick cash followed suit and quit the cooperative. But that boss Zhao was no big-shot investor from the city. He just put up a massive sheet metal shed on Senchang's wasteland, thinking up a temporary fruit buying station. Not only was he paying high prices for half-ripe fruit, but he was also secretly distributing a special chemical called Pang Dahong to the villagers who had quit. Yushuan secretly got a sample of the liquid to test, and his hands shook with pure rage. It was nothing but highly illegal, low-grade hormones and ripening agents, just to force the fruit to turn red early. Using such heavy chemicals would completely destroy the roots of the trees. The soil would harden so badly, it wouldn't recover for years. I couldn't stop worrying. In the middle of the night, I grabbed a flashlight to inspect the orchards. As the beam of light swept across,
I caught Liu Gang red-handed. Acting like a thief, he had a sprayer strapped to his back, dousing his own fruit trees with that pungent chemical.
Gangzi, are you insane? I rushed forward and snatched the sprayer from his hands. This stuff will burn the roots to death. Do you ever want to farm these dozens of acres again? But Yugong snatched the sprayer right back, his eyes bloodshot as he screamed at me. Brother Yuan, leave me alone. Boss Xiao is coming tomorrow morning to collect the fruit. If I don't spray this, how is it going to turn red? My dad is waiting for this cash for his surgery. Staring at his bloodshot eyes and stubborn, desperate face, I knew nothing I said would get through to him. The next morning, the chemically treated fruit trees seemed to undergo a magical transformation. Overnight, the cherries that were once green swelled up a whole size, turning a deep, purplish red.
Yu Gang and his buddies were beaming with joy as they harvested the fruit.
Carrying them load by load in tricycles to the tin shed next door.
That guy Zhao was surprisingly quick and straightforward, too.
He weighed them right on the spot, handing out a 20,000 yuan cash deposit to each family. He beat his chest, promising to clear the remaining balance the moment the fruit sold at the provincial wholesale market. When Lin Yuan walked past our cooperative, counting a stack of crisp red bills, his back was straighter than ever. It left the other members, who were still waiting for their fruit to naturally ripen, green with envy. But when it comes to farming, Mother Nature and the earth itself never tell a lie. Just 3 days into their dreams of striking it rich, news came from the provincial wholesale market that struck them like a bolt from the blue. The hormone-ripened fruit looked flawless on the outside, but the inside was nothing but sour water, with mushy, falling apart flesh. After sitting trapped in the hot truck for a day and a night, the moment the crates were opened at the provincial wholesale market, the fruit at the bottom had collapsed into a pile of rotten mush, giving off a rancid, sour stench. The big wholesalers didn't just reject the shipment. They also threatened to report Zhao to the business bureau. Seeing that things had taken a terrible turn, Zhao packed up and fled in the dead of night. The tin shed was left completely abandoned. The IOU slips Lin Yuan and his folks held for the remaining balance became nothing but worthless paper. But the worst was yet to come. When Lin Yuan rushed out to his orchard and looked, he collapsed straight into the mud. The toxic side effects of that miracle chemical had kicked in. The leaves on the fruit trees were turning yellow and falling off in droves, and thick, sticky yellow sap was oozing from the trunks. When he dug up the soil to look, the roots had already blackened and rotted away. No money earned. And the precious land passed down by his parents was completely ruined. What a sin.
What did I do to deserve this? What a sin!
Haha. Lin Yuan sat beneath the dead trees.
Slapping himself hard across the face, left and right, until blood dripped from the corners of his mouth. His desperate wails echoed through the empty orchard, sounding incredibly tragic. Just as dusk was falling, the door to my brick office was suddenly flung open. Lin Yuan and the other villagers who had left our cooperative stood there, looking completely defeated, like frostbitten crops. With a heavy thud, they all fell to their knees right outside my doorstep. Brother, thank you. Finally, we were blinded by Jiu of lies.
That guy Zhao ruined us. He absolutely ruined us.
Liu Gang dribbled on the floor.
A grown man sobbing hysterically, covered in tears and snot. Our trees are dying, and all our money is gone. Please, I beg you, save us. Just last night, these men were smugly counting their cash. Today, they're bankrupt farmers with nothing left. Looking at them, I didn't feel a shred of satisfaction. I only felt a deep, aching pain for this land. I slammed my hand on the desk and stood up. Genzi! How many times did I warn you? Farming requires a conscience. If you cheat the land will cheat you right back. This is your karma. Brother Win, we know we messed up. Just help us save the trees. We'll do whatever it takes. I took a deep breath, staring hard at them. Fine. The cooperative will take you back. Our agricultural technicians will also do their best to save your trees. But let's get one thing straight. Your land is now classified as a soil restoration zone.
For the next 3 years, you must strictly follow ecological standards to restore the soil.
Any fruit you produce will go entirely toward paying off your seedlings and fertilizer. You won't see a single penny in dividends.
For 3 whole years, you will work as hard laborers for this cooperative,
Earning a basic daily wage just to pay off your debts. We'll do it.
We'll sign.
Gangzi gasped, pressing his red thumbprint onto the restoration agreement without a second thought. After that massive storm, the people of Lushou village were finally united. The loyal villagers who stayed looked at their own bountiful crops, feeling a deep sense of relief. Finally, the day came. Our cooperative's 300 acres of naturally ripened premium cherries were ready for a massive harvest. But just as we prepared for the harvest, on the very eve of the picking, the village loudspeaker suddenly blared with a piercing flood warning. Emergency broadcast. Due to a severe convective weather system, our county will experience level 10 gales and severe hailstorms, starting from 10 p.m. tonight until the early morning. All villages must take immediate precautions. The static screech of the speaker cut through the air like a freezing blade. It struck terror straight into the hearts of every single villager. Hail? For fruit farmers, this was a flat-out death sentence. They were looking at trees heavy with ripe, premium fruit. Real golden nuggets that could easily sell for dozens of dollars a pound. But if the hail bruised even a tiny bit of their skin, they would rot and fester instantly. Just like that, more than half a year of back-breaking sweat and tears would go completely down the drain. Don't just stand there. I roared at the top of my lungs, standing in the middle of the courtyard. Every strong man in the village, get to the warehouse.
Pull out the hail nets and the heavy-duty tarp.
Women and elders, grab your headlamps and baskets.
Harvest as much as you can. Save whatever you can. In that desperate moment, the people of Li Shu village came together with a fierce, unprecedented unity.
Nobody cared about getting paid.
Nobody uttered a single complaint. Desperate to redeem himself, Li Yuan charged right to the very front.
He single-handedly shouldered a 200-pound wooden pole for the hail nets, sprinting through the deep mud so hard he lost a shoe along the way.
Meanwhile, Yiswan was directing the others, swiftly clipping the ripe fruit and packing them into padded crates.
Suddenly, a violent gale whipped up, thrashing the fruit trees wildly.
Raindrops as thick as pebbles pelted our faces, stinging with agonizing pain.
Pull this last net tight. Secure this end.
Drive the stakes in. Ripping off my shirt, I stood bare-chested in the raging storm, desperately hauling on the heavy rope.
The rough hemp rope tore my palms raw, leaving them covered in bloody blisters. But right at the exact second we secured the rope to the wooden stakes, a walnut-sized hailstone, whipped by the howling wind, slammed violently into the mud right next to my foot. It blasted a deep crater in the dirt. Heaven's brutal test of life and death had truly arrived.
Crack, crack, clatter. Walnut-sized hailstones pelted the protective nets, unleashing a deafening, relentless roar.
It was as if the heavens themselves were screaming in rage. The raging winds, loaded with heavy ice, threatened to rip the massive trees right out of the ground.
20 or 30 of us grown men huddled beneath the net,
Completely drenched to the bone by the freezing, icy rain.
thick, freezing mud swallowed our boots.
We gripped the thick nylon ropes of the protective net with everything we had, fighting to hold on.
Hold on! Don't you dare let go, even if it kills you! Wiping a handful of muddy water from my face, I screamed at the top of my lungs.
Hold the line.
If even one main rope snaps, every single golden nugget underneath this net will instantly turn into a pile of rotting mush. The thick rope sliced deep in the Yugang's shoulder, carving out a bloody gash, but he didn't make a single sound.
Instead, he threw his entire back against the tilting main stake to prop it up. "Brother, run!" he yelled.
Even if I have to sacrifice my life today,
I will hold this damn net up. For 2 whole hours, we endured absolute purgatory. The protective nets were warped and sagging under the crushing weight of the ice. The heavy ice layer was sagging dangerously low, hanging less than half a meter above the treetops. And then finally, the wind died down and the rain began to stop. The first light of dawn finally broke in the east. Exhausted, everyone collapsed right there in the mud. Looking up, the protective nets were piled high with crushed ice. But underneath them, the dark red cherries were completely safe and sound. The crop was saved. But before anyone could even celebrate,
Yuan came running over from the lowest lying section of the orchard, looking absolutely panicked.
he brought news that was far more devastating than the hail.
Lin Yuan, hurry, you've got to come look at the west side.
It's completely flooded, Yusan cried, his legs caked in thick mud.
His voice cracked with sheer panic.
My heart sank instantly.
I scrambled to my feet and sprinted toward the west. This orchard used to be a low-lying, salty wasteland. Even though we dug drainage ditches, last night's downpour was just too overwhelming. Right now, dozens of acres of fruit trees on the west side had their roots completely submerged in thick, muddy water.
Cherries can't survive waterlogging.
If we can't drain this water, and they stay submerged for 24 hours, the roots will suffocate and rot. The entire orchard will die. Tears of frustration streamed down Yushan's face.
Water pumps. Quick, go borrow some water pump from the village office.
Ya yelled desperately. There's no time. The ground is nothing but deep mud. Tractors won't even be able to drive in here. I gritted my teeth.
I grabbed a shovel.
We dig. By hand.
We need to dig the main drainage canal another half-meter deeper. We'll drain the water straight into the river outside the village.
Once again, the entire village, men, women, young, and old, sprang. Standing knee-deep in the muddy water, they shoveled out the muck, shovelful by painful shovelful. Mud mixed with sweat, but not a single person stopped to rest. Just as we were about to clear the main canal, Uncle Lou, who was digging at the very front, suddenly hit something with a loud metallic clang. His shovel recoiled violently from the impact. Everyone pushed the muddy water aside to look and froze in sheer disbelief. A massive bluestone slab, the size of a dining table, was completely blocking the only path of the drainage canal. The water had absolutely nowhere to go. The floodwater is backing up and piling up right here, and the excavators can't even get in. We smashed our shovels and steel crowbars against the stone, leaving nothing but a few faint white scratches. It's completely useless. As we watch the fruit trees soak in the water longer and longer, everyone is frantic with worry. What are we going to do? God is trying to ruin us. He's not giving us any way to survive. A few of the women started crying out of sheer panic. I stared at that massive bluestone, my mind racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, hey.
Take some men and fetch some dry firewood. The more, the better.
and get a few buckets of well water ready. Even though no one understood why, they still did exactly as they were told.
The dry firewood was piled high on top of the bluest stone,
Doused in diesel and set ablaze.
The roaring fire baked the stone for over half an hour. The stone became scalding hot, glowing a deep, fiery red.
Per the cold water, I roared.
Several buckets of ice-cold well water were violently splashed onto the scorching hot stone. With a massive, deafening hiss, thick white smoke shot into the sky.
Under the extreme thermal shock, the hard blue stone cracked with a loud snap, splitting into several deep fissures.
The guys swung the sledgehammers and smashed it, and the stone finally shattered. The floodwater rushed away through the newly dug ditch.
The trees were saved.
But the next day, as soon as the blazing sun came out, the temperature skyrocketed. And like magic, the cherries across the entire orchard
Fully ripened overnight.
An unprecedented battle to harvest them was now imminent. The water has receded, and the fruit is ripe. 300 acres of land, with hundreds of thousands of pounds of fully ripe cherries hanging on the branches. These things are delicate.
Once they're fully ripe, if they aren't harvested within 3 days,
They will turn soft and rot right on the trees. My former boss's dozens of refrigerated trucks are already parked at the entrance of the village.
but looking around, our cooperator only has a few dozen workers.
Lin Yuan, this isn't going to work. Even everyone goes without eating or sleeping.
There's no way we can harvest even 1/10 of it in 3 days.
New Gown was drenched in sweat.
Squeezing his harvesting shears so hard, he almost snapped them. Looking at the orchard overflowing with bright red cherries, my heart burned with sheer panic.
Every single elderly person and woman in the village who could still move had gone out to the fields.
Even the kids on summer break brought out little stools to sit under the trees and help sort them. Even the titch. But against a massive 300-acre harvest, this was like trying to put out a forest fire with a cup of water.
Watching those perfectly ripe, beautiful fruits, unable to be picked in time,
Plop and splat onto the muddy ground. That was everyone's hard-earned money for the entire year.
I was so stressed that blisters broke out all over my mouth.
Flashing my phone, I called everyone I could, offering high wages to hire temporary workers. But the laborers from the neighboring villages were all rushing to harvest their own crops. Had we survived man-made disasters?
Endured natural calamities.
Only to watch our harvest rot on the trees in the end? Just as I was about to sink into complete despair,
3 tour buses with out-of-town license plates suddenly pulled up to the village entrance.
the buses ground to a halt right at the orchard gates.
The doors swung open,
And over 100 young people carrying backpacks and bags poured out. I focused my eyes and took a closer look. Tears immediately flooded my eyes. Leading the way was New Gang's older brother, who had been working down south. Behind him were all the young men and women from our Lishu village, who usually worked in electronics factories down south.
Brother Yuan, we saw in the family group chat that the village hit a disaster and that you couldn't harvest the fruits in time.
Is that true?
Yes, it is.
Brother Yuan, tell us what to do. Li Gong's older brother tossed down his woven sack and rolled up his sleeves. We all talked it over. This orchard is the root of our entire village.
So we all took time off work.
And chartered a bus to rush back overnight. We've got to protect our own livelihood.
We've got to protect our own livelihood. With over 100 young, strong laborers joining, the tide of the battle completely turned. The orchard instantly bustled with feverish energy. The young people climbed ladders with agile movements to harvest, while the elderly sat under the trees, skillfully sorting and packing the fruit. In just 2.5 days, all 300,000 pounds of premium cherries were safely moved into storage and loaded onto the former boss's refrigerated trucks. Lishu village welcomed a truly epic harvest. Watching the refrigerated trucks fill up one by one, everyone's face was beaming with the joy of a bountiful harvest. But just as the convoy was preparing to set off for the provincial capital, a villager covered in mud came running from the edge of the village. Someone screamed in pure panic. "This is bad! We're in deep trouble!" The old stone bridge leading out of the village. It collapsed. The relentless rain completely washed it out. The convoy is trapped. None of the trucks can get out. Then, a deafening boom rang out. It hit everyone, like a sudden crack of thunder out of nowhere. Everyone rushed to the edge of the village, following the pointing hands of the panicked locals. What they saw made them gasp in collective horror. Days of torrential rain had turned the river outside into a once-in-a-century raging flood. The main pillar of that 30-year-old stone bridge had been completely ripped out of the riverbed. An entire deck had completely collapsed. This, Salado Hall by the muddy, violent water, without a trace.
On the other side of the river lay the highway to the city. But on this side were 300,000 pounds of delicate, freshly packed cherries waiting to be shipped.
Boss Can was practically jumping out of his skin, crying out, "Brother Lin, what do we do? The refrigerated trucks can't get across. If this fruit sits trapped in the village for more than 24 hours,
It'll all rot and spoil.
we are completely ruined. The breach of contract penalty I'll have to pay is an astronomical sum." Staring at the churning, muddy yellow water, I clenched my teeth. Rebuilding the bridge was out of the question. There simply wasn't time. Taking a detour meant navigating treacherous, muddy mountain passes.
The trucks would never make it through. Yan, the current is fast. But the water near the bridge is only waist deep. Lu Gang jumped into the river to test the depth, yelling back at me. The trucks can't cross, but people can. My eyes instantly lit up. I spun around to face the crowd. Folks,
If fate wants to block our path,
then we will carve out our own. Get those empty trucks on the other side, down to the riverbank. Our whole village will form a human chain. We'll use our bare hands to pass all 300,000 pounds of fruit across, box by box. Let's do this.
Over 100 young men who had just returned from working in the south didn't hesitate for a single second
They ripped off their shirts.
and dove, one by one, into the bone-chilling water,
The current was fierce.
threatening to sweep them away at any moment.
Relying purely on human hands to pass 300,000 pounds of fruit was a seemingly impossible task.
yet across the river of Lishu village, a breathtaking, high-stakes battle against time began.
The water was freezing cold.
Thick with branches and silts swept down from upstream.
Over 200 strong men from Lishu village stood waist-deep in the rushing torrent, forming a massive 200-meter-long human wall.
Arm arm, everyone pressed their shoulders and chests against the rushing rapids, forming an unbreakable human conveyor belt. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, push.
The deafening work chants echoed across the river,
On the bank, the elders and women passed the packed foam boxes to those in the water,
and those in the water passed them down, person to person,
holding them high above their heads,
passing them steadily to the next person.
all the way to the refrigerated truck on the opposite bank. 1 box, 2 boxes. 1,000 boxes.
2,000 boxes. We kept going from noon until the sun went down.
Those in the water were so freezing that their lips turned purple, and their arms were so sore they couldn't even lift them. But not a single soul called a quist.
Yukoking's older brother, who usually works down south, got a deep gash on the bottom of his foot from some broken glass in the river.
Blood seeped into the rushing water, but he just grit his teeth, wrapped it tightly with a strip of cloth, and stood right back in the water to keep passing the boxes.
Standing on the bank directing them, Boss Chan looked at this group of farmers risking their lives just to save the harvest.
His eyes welled with tears,
And he quietly wiped them away over and over again. By 10 at night,
the very last box of cherries was safely loaded onto the refrigerated truck on the other side. Boss Chen stood on the opposite bank and gave us a deep, heartfelt bow.
the massive truck roared to life and headed out toward the provincial capital.
The fruit was finally on its way. Everyone collapsed right there on the riverbank.
Without even the strength to lift a single finger.
But as I stared at that broken stone bridge, my heart suddenly clenched with worry. We made it with this 300 mu of land,
But if we want to lease those 500 mu of barren hells and really make it big,
without a decent road.
our Luishu village will never truly get ahead.
A week later, Boss Chan's final payment cleared into the coup's account.
Once again, the courtyard was piled high with cash.
Everyone was handed a thick stack of dividends. Beaming with pure joy, I stood up on the steps, waiting for the excitement to quiet down a bit, then raised my megaphone and shouted, "My fellow villagers! We sold our fruit and made our money, but our bridge is broken.
If we want to truly change our lives for good,
And if we want to plant money trees all over the remaining 500 mu of barren hills, we absolutely must build a proper road. We're going to build a solid, reinforced concrete bridge."
I paused for a moment.
And loudly announced that I, Lin Yuan, would personally donate 3 million won of my own profits.
I'm giving it all to the village for free, to build bridges and pave roads. Not only will we connect the bridge,
But we're going to pave concrete roads right up to the front door of every single household. The courtyard fell dead silent for a few seconds.
then it erupted into thunderous applause and wild cheers.
Our old village chief, Wang Bo, grabbed my hand, trembling with emotion, and kept saying I was the greatest savior Lishu village had ever seen. Soon, the construction crew from the county arrived in the village.
Bulldozers rumbled as they began clearing the path. The bridge construction was also in full swing, bustling with energy.
Seeing a wide, smooth road about to connect the entire village, everyone was working with incredible enthusiasm. But just as the paving reached that abandoned plot of land owned by Old Man Lee at the east end of the village,
The bulldozers were forced to a sudden halt.
Old Man Lai was clutching a tattered old quilt, lying flat on the ground right in front of the bulldozer's massive tracks. He was even waving a rusted sickle in his hand.
Zhao's bloodshot as he screamed.
"Who dares touch my land? Do it, and I'll fight you to the death." This very road, which carried the entire village's hope for a better life,
Was about to be cut dead in its tracks.
Uncle Lee, what on earth are you doing? Please, get up. I rushed over to stop the frustrated driver and knelt down to talk him out of it. Old Man Lee was notoriously stubborn.
He had no wife, no children, and lived all by himself in that crumbling old yard.
He pointed to a small dirt mound behind his house, tears streaming down his face.
Lin Yuan,
"It's not that I'm trying to be unreasonable here. My parents are buried right under this mound.
if this road has to run through here,
You'll be digging up my family's ancestral grave.
When I die, how am I supposed to face them in the afterlife?
The village officials were growing frantic. The survey team had made it clear that this path was the safest route to avoid landslide zones, and by far the cheapest option. If they had to reroute, they would not only have to blast through the mountains, but the cost would skyrocket by over $1 million John. On top of that, construction would be delayed by more than 6 months.
Uncle Lee, Wonbo pleaded earnestly. The village is willing to compensate you 100,000 yuan.
We'll even pick a beautiful spot with perfect feng shui on the back mountain to relocate their graves.
How does that sound?
No way. No amount of money will ever be enough.
This is my ancestors' land.
Moving that grave would make me an unfilial son.
Old man Lee refused to budge, no matter what.
The road construction project ground to a complete halt. The villagers were furious, complaining left and right.
Some of the hot-headed youth even suggested bulldozing the grave mound under the cover of night. After all, we'd offered him more than enough money.
Hearing this,
I tore into them and gave them a piece of my mind.
We're here to lead everyone to prosperity, not to act like a bunch of bandits.
when money can't solve a problem, we have to use our hearts.
That night, I grabbed 2 bottles of strong liquor.
And knocked on old man Lee's worn-out wooden door all by myself.
I didn't bring up the road construction at all.
Instead, I made him a promise he never in a million years saw coming.
Uncle Lee, I understand how you feel.
Our parents are our lifeblood. Of course you'd fight anyone who tries to disturb them. I poured old man Lee a glass of liquor. To be honest, my own father passed away early.
He didn't even get a decent resting place. The biggest regret of my life
Is that I never got to give him a proper send-off. Old man Lee let out a long sigh,
Picked up his glass and took a slow sip.
his eyes welled up.
Uncle Lee,
We absolutely have to build this road.
this is the only hope for generations of Lishu village.
I looked him dead in the eye and said with absolute sincerity, if you can trust me,
I'll step up and be like a son to you.
we'll buy the absolute best plot on the sunny slope
And hire a feng shui master to pick the most auspicious day.
the day we relocate the grave.
I will personally wear the traditional mourning clothes for your parents, carry their funeral banner, and hold their burial urn. I'll make sure they are moved into their new home with the utmost honor and respect.
What do you say? Old man Lee's hand holding the glass trembled violently.
Cloudy tears rolled down his cheeks. In the countryside, childless elders fear nothing more than having no one to perform the final rites for their parents, or for themselves.
My promise to carry their funeral banner and hold their urn struck a deep chord in his heart. Lin Yuan, you are a good lad.
Old man Lee suddenly grabbed my hand
And wept uncontrollably. All right.
I'll move them. Just because of those words of yours?
This old man won't stand in the way of everyone's future.
3 days later, the grave relocation was carried out with solemn dignity.
Dressed in all black, I led the procession at the very front.
Holding the urn close as we laid the old man's remains to rest on the sunny slope. Finally, there were no more obstacles. In just over a month, the bridge and asphalt road were fully open to traffic. Refrigerated trucks could finally drive right up to the edge of the orchard. Without losing a single moment, I leased 500 acres of barren hills behind the mountain and kicked off the second phase of our cooperative. But just days after planting a huge batch of premium fruit saplings,
The back mountain welcomed a pack of uninvited guests.
On those 500 acres of land, we had just finished planting top-quality Tunisian soft-seed pomegranates and golden peach saplings.
before we could even catch our breath, the gang, our mountain patrol, came rushing back in a total panic.
Brother Yuan, this is bad. The back mountain has been hit. We've been robbed.
A massive patch of the newly planted peach saplings has been completely uprooted. Yukuan and I rushed up the hill to look, and our hearts instantly sank. The ground was covered in a mess of hoofprints, and the saplings were chewed to pieces. The freshly tilled organic soil was dug into deep, messy craters. This wasn't done by humans. Yuan crouched down, examined the ground, and said, "It's a pack of wild boars. The organic fertilizer we use when tilling has fermented soybean cake and fish bone meal in it.
The smell is way too strong.
It drew all the wild boars out of the deep woods. We're in deep trouble now. Wild boars have insane destructive power, and they're a protected species. They can't hunt them, and we can't poison them." Several villagers were absolutely furious. They grabbed their shovels, ready to set up electric fences.
Brother Wen, tonight we'll run high voltage lines along the rocks.
And we'll set up poison bait. I refuse to believe.
We can't kill these damn beasts.
I snapped at them instantly. That is illegal.
The clean money we worked so hard to make
Is not worth crossing the line over. If we end up with a criminal record, our eco-friendly brand will be completely ruined, and the whole village will suffer with us. The entire village will suffer. We can't hunt them. We can't kill them.
Are we just supposed to stand by and watch millions of dollars worth of saplings get eaten to the bone?
Just as everyone was at a complete loss,
Night fell, and a series of chilling guttural grunts suddenly echoed from the back mountain.
those beasts were actually closing in, heading straight for our main cherry orchard right on the verge of harvest.
Banging pots and clanging gongs.
And blinding them with high-powered flashlights. The moment I gave the order, dozens of young guys lined up along the edge of the cherry orchard, desperately banging on old basins and brass gongs. The deafening noise and blinding flashlight beams
Finally startled those dozen or so massive wild boars. Grunting in panic, they spun around and fled back into the deep mountains.
But this was only treating the symptom, not the root cause.
First thing the next morning, Jisha and I rushed to the County Forestry Bureau. The experts there took our city-level ecological demonstration park incredibly seriously.
By that afternoon, they arrived at Lishu Village with professional animal traps and ultrasonic repellers.
Under the experts' guidance, we hung animal deterrent devices all over the tall trees on the outer edge of the orchard.
The moment a wild boar approached, the devices would blast a high-frequency, ear-splitting sound wave.
But that wasn't all. Ishan also led everyone in clearing a buffer zone around the outermost perimeter of the orchard, planting cheap sweet potatoes there.
He called it ecological coexistence. Wiping away his sweat, Yishon explained to the villagers,
If we leave some food on the outside, and the boars fill up on sweet potatoes while being scared off by the repeller's noise, they won't venture any further to ruin our valuable fruit trees.
Sure enough, for several nights in a row, the wild boars only dug up some sweet potatoes on the far edge,
Never daring to take a single step into the core orchard again.
The wild boar crisis was finally averted, and the newly planted saplings had firmly taken root. But then, in the spring of the second year, when my mountainside was covered in blossoming fruit trees, right at the critical moment when we were about to reap a bountiful harvest, the Weather Bureau suddenly issued a red alert.
An extreme weather event, a virtual death sentence for fruit farmers, was quietly creeping in.
Emergency broadcast. Affected by a Siberian cold wave, temperatures tonight will plummet by 15 degrees,
And severe frost will hit localized areas.
The words late spring cold pierced the heart of every single fruit farmer like a needle.
In spring, the fruit trees are in full bloom.
If those delicate buds are frozen to death by a late frost, we won't harvest a single thing this year.
All the investment in our hundreds of acres of land will go down the drain.
Yan, what do we do?
The buds have already blossomed.
If the temperature drops like this,
They'll all freeze into solid icicles.
Lugan stamped his feet in panic. Don't panic.
we'll use the method passed down by our ancestors. Smudge burning.
I ripped off my jacket
And let out a roar.
Every single person in the village, young and old, hauled out all the damp straw from their homes, weeds, and dead leaves, dragging them all out to the fields. We piled them up, one heap every 10 meters. The moment the sun went down, the temperature plummeted like crazy.
Our breath turned into thick plumes of white smoke the second we opened our mouths.
By 11 o'clock that night, the temperature was hovering right around freezing.
With one shout from me, light the fires.
Hundreds of smoke piles were lit at once. Because the weeds were damp, they didn't spark into open flames.
But instead billowed out clouds of thick, choking white smoke.
Before long, the entire orchard was blanketed in a heavy shroud of smoke.
Acting like a giant protective blanket,
It trapped the heat rising from the ground.
and blocked the freezing air from dropping from above. Our eyes stung, and tears poured down from the suffocating smoke, their faces covered in pitch black ash.
But not a single soul backed down.
Shovels in hand.
We ran around hundreds of acres of orchards all night long, constantly throwing on more weeds and leaves, terrified that even one pile might die out. Finally, the eastern sky began to glow with a warm red light. The sun was rising. The air slowly began to warm up. Everyone collapsed onto the ash-covered, muddy ground,
Staring anxiously at the delicate blossoms on the branches.
Did we actually save them?
Vishal put out a magnifying glass, carefully leaning in to examine the bud of a honey peach blossom. Everyone held their breath, their hearts leaping into their throats.
After a few agonizing seconds,
Sha looked up.
His eyes instantly welled with tears.
He screamed with sheer excitement. The center is still bright yellow.
It hasn't turned black.
We saved them! Our flowers survived!
Not a single one froze to death.
A deafening roar of cheers erupted throughout the entire orchard. Everyone threw their arms around each other, tears of joy carving paths through the soot on their soot-stained faces. With these bare, mud-caked hands, we had literally dragged this year's harvest back from the jaws of fate. When autumn finally arrived,
Lishu Village has welcomed an unprecedented
Bumper harvest.
not only did our cherries sell for sky-high prices again,
But the sock-seeded pomegranates and golden peaches on the back hill are also bursting with fruit.
orders are flying in like snowflakes.
The Provincial Agricultural TV channel's production crew even set up camp right here in Liushu Village.
they turned our real-life struggle, reclaiming the barren saline lands and fighting off hail and late frost, into a documentary called The Miracle of Lishu Village.
It is now broadcasting on loop during prime time across the entire province.
Liushu Village has become a nationally renowned benchmark for ecological agriculture.
The year-end dividend distribution meeting is about to start. The whole village is decked out in lanterns and banners, 10 times more festive than Chinese New Year.
And behind everyone's back, I have been quietly planning something huge for a very long time.
Out on the grand square of the Liushu Village Committee office, a massive feast of 100 tables has been set up.
Every family has built a spacious, modern villa
With brand new cars parked right outside their doors.
Everyone's face is beaming with a genuine, heartfelt smile.
That is the dignity and confidence that comes from working hard with your own 2 hands. Dressed in a sharp, clean suit,
I slowly walk onto the stage in the center of the square as the villagers erupt into thunderous applause.
Old Chi Fong is grinning from ear to ear. My fellow villagers, it has been 3 years. 3 years ago, I was kicked out of my home with just 50,000 yuan to my name.
But you all stuck by me, suffering in those barren saline fields,
and risking your lives alongside me in the freezing hailstorms. Today, our Liushu village has finally stood up. We can finally hold our heads high.
thunderous applause erupts from the crowd.
Many are wiping away tears. I take a deep breath, letting my gaze drift through the crowd until it locks onto Yuan, who is sitting right in the front row.
Today, he is wearing a snow-white sweater, watching me quietly.
A gentle warmth shining in his eyes. Then stride down from the stage. Walk right up to him, and right before the eyes of the entire village, I drop down on one knee.
I didn't bring expensive roses.
Instead, I pull out a bouquet from behind my back, crafted from the very first peach blossoms and pomegranate flowers of our orchard. Looking at him with teary eyes, I say, Yuan. My voice trembles slightly. These past 3 years,
Without you, this orchard wouldn't exist.
and neither would the Lin Yuan of today. This land has witnessed all our sweat and tears. Today, I want everyone in this village to witness our love. Will you marry me?
Yuan covered her mouth.
Tears streaming down her face like a broken string of pearls. She looked at me without a single shred of hesitation and nodded her head eagerly. Choking back tears, she sobbed, I do. With trembling hands, I slipped the ring onto her ring finger and pulled her tightly into my arms. Fireworks instantly exploded across the night sky of Liushu village, lighting up this land that was once so quiet, but is now bursting with life. The cheers of the villagers echoed all the way to the heavens. I looked down at the love of my life in my arms, and then at this land, now overflowing with golden harvests. I knew that our beautiful life together was only just beginning.